I was called into a sit down, and honestly, the way it was set up, I didn't know if I was going to walk out of the room.
Your father perhaps didn't initiate the contract, but accepted that's the price. If you want to leave, you swore an oath, and if we're going to stick to that oath, well, if my son gets knocked, that's the price he has to pay.
People have asked me, do you believe your father would have put a gun to your head? Somebody, from Australia threatened when I come over there, this is going to happen and all of that.
Making the money. One of the things that, at a very early age in this world, 35, and you were, and I'm just going off what was reported in Fortune magazine, but they put you as number 18 of the most wealthy, powerful mafia figures in the United States at the time when you were 35. How did you make your money, and how did you get on that list?
Well, let me comment on the list. I mean, it was a huge article, and I was number 18 on that list. I was 5 behind John Gotti at the time. John wasn't the boss, and I was the youngest guy on the list. But, don't ask me how they make a list like that. They didn't ask for our tax returns, It just it sold a lot of magazines back then. I was in jail when that list came out, and they locked me down because the reporter was all over the news talking about all of us. So in prison, they lock you down when that stuff happens. They don't like you to have publicity. But, look, I was fortunate. Number one, I was very motivated. I was fortunate because I knew how to use the life to benefit me in business. Yeah. And I brought some new things into the family that I hadn't done before. And I was fortunate. I went on to make a very significant amount of money. And again, money is power in that life. So, that money also caused me to have good relationships with bosses from some of the other families, like Fat Tony Salerno. I shouldn't call him Fat Tony, it's disrespectful, but Tony Salerno, the boss of the Genovese family, Chin, guys like that, even, a bunch of guys. So when that happens, you become more powerful just because of your relationships and so on and so forth. So I guess that's why they had me on the list. And, when I got involved in the whole gas tax fraud scheme, it was it was probably more money that was earned since the days of Prohibition, honestly.
Yeah, well, that's it was a huge amount of money from what I understand. But tell us the process, what the crime, because it seems simple in its planning, but it reaped in a lot of money. So it was about tax evasion, basically.
It was tax fraud, really. Yeah. It was stealing the taxes on every gallon of gasoline from the government. Yeah. I use the word stealing or defrauding, whatever. We collected the tax and we didn't pay them. Yeah. And we figured out a system that the government could not figure out how we did it. Yeah. They just couldn't figure it out. So, and it lasted almost 8 years. I mean, I had brought the Russian mobsters from Brighton Beach in Brooklyn involved with me, and they were tremendous earners also. Yeah. So we had an operation that was bringing in $7, $8, $10 million a week. We were selling 500 million gallons of gas a month and taking down 25 to 40 cents a gallon. So it was a lot of money.
It's an incredible lot of money. And that was setting up fake companies over in Panama and just avoiding the tax on each gallon of fuel.
Yeah, I had 18 Panamanian companies that were licensed to collect the tax on every gallon of gasoline. Yeah. Setting up the licenses and going through Panama, it was a very intricate process, which I can't explain now. In case I ever want to go back in the business, I don't want to give any secrets out.
But you should come over to Australia and explain it, because evading tax is a national pastime.
Well, you know how many people have come up to me, Michael, just tell me how to do it. You don't have to do anything, and I'll do everything. We'll make a lot of money. I'd say, yeah, until you get in trouble, and then I'm the guy you're going to point the finger at. But anyway, so it was a very intricate scheme. I had a partner who was pretty brilliant, in working this out. He was very devious. I had a team of accountants, and we were able to figure out a system to where the government could not penetrate it for almost a year. Yeah. When they finally did get to us in a year, we would just close that company and move on to the next one. It was a daisy chain.
Literally one step ahead each time. So with that money, Michael, what was your lifestyle like? Like, yeah, I would imagine there was money that goes to the family and that you would have been reaping. Is it true you had at the height of your earning capacity, you had helicopters and aeroplane and all
I had a Lear 25 jet airplane. I had a Bell helicopter. I had 2 big yachts in the back of I had a house in Florida. I had a boat there, and I had a house in New York, and I had a boat there. I had a house in Marina Del Rey, California. So I had 3 homes around the.
You're doing a bit tough.
Yeah, and but also too, I had legitimate business. Also, I had 2 automobile agencies. I had a film production company and a distribution company. I was involved in a few nightclubs and restaurants. So I spread things around, but there was nothing as lucrative as the gas tax scam. That's for sure.
Other earns for the Mafia were loaning money, loan sharking. Is that is that the term you'd use over there? But we'd use it here, loan sharking.
At the time of my arrest and the time I went into prison, I had about $1 million on the street loaned out.
Okay, so you loan out $1 million, and how often do people have to pay it back, or what's the is it?
Normally weekly, and we would charge whatever I felt that person can handle. Maybe a point, 1% a week, as much as 5% a week, and then to some of my guys underneath me, I would give them money at a point and let them go out and lend it to who they wanted to, so that they could earn a living.
Right.
So, but I had a lot of money at different times on the street.
And if someone didn't pay, what's the consequences of that? How was that negotiated?
Yeah, well, listen,
you see that quite often.
Yes and no. First of all, I was very selective who I loaned it to. Okay. I'm not going to lend it to a guy that's got a tremendous gambling problem and he's going to go and blow the money tomorrow. I lent it to business people. I lent it to my own guys, knowing that, I gave them a break on it. So rarely did I get beat. I normally got paid. The only time I got beat, it was always funny. I got beat when they paid me enough in interest to give me back my principal.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden the guy goes bad, but I got all my money back. So, and it was usually a guy around me and said, "Oh, this guy's not paying me anymore." So I give him a pass, but I got my money back.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he made some money. So I overlooked the stuff like that. I honestly I never had to hurt anybody for not paying a debt back. Right. Never.
Do you think the threat was enough to, or the intimidation or threat potentially, or the consequences is enough to get them to pay?
They understood. Now, again, you don't want anybody to make a fool out of you.
Yeah.
Like you borrow money from different people and he's not paying you, and he's, a guy like that will get himself in trouble. But I made sure, I loaned money to the right people.
Yeah. What about sports betting? You dabble in that, and you've actually, if I understand it, you go and lecture people too about it now, about the dangers of professional sport or gambling professional sport. Tell us about that world.
Well, that's actually how I started speaking. I was recruited out of prison when I came home to speak to athletes about the dangers of gambling, because I had probably 12, 13 bookmakers that worked under me. Because the bookmakers are on the street, they're associated with us in some way, shape, or form. So, I had guys that were under me, and quite honestly, they were lending money out. I mean, they were allowing guys, professional athletes, to gamble on credit.
Yep.
And these athletes would lose, and they'd be into us for a lot of money. And sometimes, if they couldn't pay, we'd get them to shave points.
Yeah.
Compromise the outcome of a game. That's how we get our money back. And that's how we'd have our hooks into a player or somebody involved with the league, maybe a coach, maybe, a manager, something like that. And it happened quite often. Athletes gamble a lot, and a lot of them are not great gamblers. They lose. I would have a bookmaker come. I'd have a bookmaker come to me and say, "Hey, so-and-so is playing with, one of the New York teams, and he's into me for $50,000. Should I cut him off?" I said, "Why would you cut him off?" I said, "Let him get into you for $250,000, $300,000, then bring him to me."
Yeah.
And that's how they used to get themselves in trouble. Then we tell them, "Listen, you're going to win your favorite to win by 20 points, by 10 points. Make sure you don't cover the spread. You're the quarterback. Throw a couple of interceptions. Do whatever you have to do, but don't make that spread." and they get themselves in trouble.
It puts them in a very difficult position, doesn't it? If they've compromised themselves. I know, speaking to some of our gangsters over here, where they wanted to get someone on side, they'd look for that gambling problem or that drug addiction or some weakness that if it was exposed, it could be exploited. So
absolutely, you look for that weakness in somebody, and I tell these athletes now. You're not gonna run away from a gambling debt, whether it's on the street or legitimately. You're gonna pay.
Yeah.
So you better know what you're doing, before you get into yourself in trouble. Now, pro athletes today, they can cover the bets. These guys make so much money, they don't get themselves in trouble. But the college kids do. They get themselves in trouble.
Do you think that's where it's headed, or that's what's being exploited now, or potentially?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, I've spoken at over 300 universities.
Yeah.
I will tell you this, over 300 universities, when I leave, I tell the athletes, I say, look, if you got a gambling problem, email me. I want to help you. I said, I don't work for the school. I don't report to the NCAA. You tell me. Yeah. I said, we'll keep it anonymous, but I want to help you out. It hasn't failed yet. And over 300 schools, by the time I get back to my hotel room, I have emails from athletes that got a gambling problem. Right. Every single time.
And you're advising them and steering them away from it.
Yeah, I try to help them. There was only two times that I had to go to the athlete and said, you're going to get yourself in very severe trouble. We have to let your coach know. I'm not going to do it if you tell me no, but I'm telling you, you're in trouble and I want to help you. It was only 2 times out of 300 schools that it went that far. And the others I was able to say, listen, you need help. Here's where I'm going to send you. We'll do it on a QT, things like that.
Oh, well, again, that comes because you've got the credibility in that you know the world. So if they're not going to listen to you, who are they going to listen to?
Yeah.
A little bit back in the Mafia, and then we'll talk about how you eventually came unstuck and ended up inside. But I'm interested. I like it's always fascinated me going for a sit down and resolving a sit down. And there's two that one I've heard you talk on where you went to a sit down where you weren't sure whether you're coming out. And I love, and this is just me liking the gangster talk, you're going with your best friend into a room and you mightn't come out. That type of sit down. Now, when you were making the money, there was the word on the street that you mightn't have been passing on all the money that you were making and might have been taking some more or wanting to break away from the family, and you got invited to a sit down. Can you take us from there?
Yeah, there was an article that came out. I forget what they said, that either I took down $1 billion or $2 billion. It was a ridiculous article. There was no credibility to it at all. But, around the same time, I had a lot of power. I had a lot of men around me. My father was home from prison. He still had a lot of juice. So, people start to get nervous. I had the Russians guys with me. My father still was a driving force. Are they going to try to take over the family? All this kind of stuff goes on. It gets into people's heads. So, I was not invited. I was called into a sit down. And honestly, the way it was set up, I didn't know if I was going to walk out of the room. And it was, one of the horrors of that life, and it is a horror. Your best friend walks you in the room, you made a mistake, you don't walk out again. And obviously, in my 20-some-odd years, I know of cases when that happens. So it was the scariest night of my life, no doubt. And, people have said to me, Michael, why didn't you cut and run? And I said, I don't know why. I was so conditioned to the life. It wasn't heroic. I'm not saying I was a hero. I'm going to face my death. It was more robotic.
Yeah,
I resigned myself to this fact that I was going to die.
Yeah.
And obviously I'm here. We worked it all out that night. And, I almost went from the frying pan into the fryer, because when I was being accused of something, I got angry.
Yeah.
And I was a captain at that time, but you don't get angry with the boss. But I was starting to get mad. And then something came over me. I said, hey, stop. Calm yourself down. You're going to walk out of here. Just calm it down, which I did.
Yeah.
And everything was great. Hey, have a glass of wine. Everything's good, all this kind of stuff. But it made a real impression on me, honestly, because I said, wow, I'm bringing in all this money and I get put on a carpet like this. And And remember, that scheme, I mean, I developed it.
Yeah.
I wasn't the only guy doing it. I'm not saying that. I didn't say. But we did it better than anybody else. And I was just bringing the family money. That was it, bringing it to them.
Yeah.
So, it was rough. But listen, it's part of the life. It goes with the territory. So you got to understand it.
Yeah, and I do. And it's interesting you're saying that you went in there and it was almost robotic. But I suppose that's the life you're conditioned to. So, if you look from the outside, you go, there's no way I'm walking into that room. But if you've been part of the life, the old saying, live by the sword, die by the sword. And I suppose there's a fatalistic approach to it too. At some point, living the life that you're living, you're going to have to pay the price, whether it's time inside or getting invited to that meeting where you don't come out. There's another one that I thought was an interesting one where I think it related to your car yard, where one of your employees spoke poorly of another made man, an issue on the car yard, and you went to a meeting to smooth it over. Can you tell us about that one?
Yeah, long story short, one of my guys insulted the brother-in-law of another made guy, and a dispute over a car, a silly dispute. And we got called to a sit down, and the guy that I went to see was a Genovese guy, who was an old timer. And the old timers resented the younger guys to begin with.
Yeah.
And I was a younger guy. So he was very upset that my guy had insulted him and through his brother-in-law, and he wanted to kill him. And I said, you're not going to kill him. I said, first of all, I was there. I lied. I said, I heard everything. Your brother-in-law is lying. Now, he can't call me a liar. He can't. So I knew I had him.
Because you're a made man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, and when I said to him, and I'm lying to save my guy, I said, I was there. I heard everything.
Yeah.
Your brother-in-law is lying. I said, so this is how it went. It's going to sound silly. I said, so if you're going to kill my guy, I'm going to kill your brother-in-law. Okay? So either we're going to have two dead guys or we're going to work this out. Now, he was very upset because, again, I'm a younger guy. He kind of resented it. He's been in the life 20 years, and I'm there a couple of years. So this went on for hours. He would not give in. And finally, I said to him, listen, do you want to take this up to the stairs? We're going to go to the boss with this. If you want, we'll do that. If not, I'll tell you how we'll resolve it. He said, how? I said, I'm going to give your brother-in-law a new car. He don't like the car he got. I'm going to give him a new car. You could tell him you got him a new car. I said, I'll take care of Jerry. If he said something disrespectful, even though he didn't, I'll take care of it. Yeah. Don't worry about it. I said, so let your brother-in-law know you won the argument. You got him a new car. Tell him whatever you want to tell him. You beat Jerry up. I don't care what you tell him. I said, but let's not take this to the next level. Well, that's how he resolved it.
Yeah, good.
Because he got to win. In his mind, he got to win,
It's so important in that world, letting people save face, like that story. Like, if people do ridiculous things to protect their pride or ego or whatever, you let them save face. Yeah, look, you won. You got you made a new car. But yeah.
I tell your brother-in-law whatever you want. You curse Jerry out, you smacked him around. Tell him whatever you want to tell him. I don't care.
Yeah.
So, and that was it, because I didn't want to make this a whole where we go up to the boss. I would have won the argument anyway, because I told him I was there and I was listening from my office window and I heard everything, and your brother-in-law's a liar.
And he couldn't challenge you on that.
No. And I said, if we take this up, this is going to reverse itself. Your brother-in-law is going to be in trouble because I'm going to have to tell everybody he's lying, and nobody can call me a liar. So I had leverage.
Fascinating. Now, you're living the life, and then you started realising that, and I think it's, you acknowledge the higher the profile you get, the more people want to bring you down, and you got a sense that the wolves were getting close in the law enforcement. You had a lot of people working on you, had strike forces on you. Did you see the inevitable coming to the point where you were going to get locked up and end up doing some time?
Well, listen, I went to trial 5 times.
Yep.
And fortunately, I was acquitted or dismissed in every case. But I had a 14-agency task force that's main job was to put me in jail forever. I didn't know this.
Michael, just to explain that, because we don't have as many agencies as you do in the United States. So when you say a 14-agency strike force, is it a whole group of people they've brought together?
Oh, yeah. They had the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York, the U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of New York, the United States Post Office inspectors, the locals from Brooklyn, New York, Long Island. It was 14 agencies. It was like unheard of, you know? And I didn't find this out until afterwards. They used to meet twice a week in the courthouse in Long Island.
Yeah.
And mapping out a way to put me in jail forever. So after my last case that I beat Giuliani in the last case, I said, listen, they're going to keep coming at me because I knew they were coming after me on this whole gas tax scheme. And I said, this could be a problem because my partner became an informant. And I said, even though I beat him once before because he testified against me in Giuliani case and I was acquitted, I said, I could probably beat him again, but if I lose, I'm going away for 50 years. Yeah. That's it. No doubt. So that's when I started to say, you know what? This life is in trouble. At the same time, you got to understand, the racketeering laws were wreaking havoc on everybody. Everybody was going to jail for 100 years, 150 years, 200 years. I'm the youngest guy out of everyone. I said, they're going to give me 300 years if I go down.
In explaining the racketeering laws, it's almost like you enter into a conspiracy with a group of people and you're up to no good. It's a real broad indictment, is it? Racketeering.
Yeah, it's it's called RICO. It's a RICO statute. You know, Racketeering Influence, Corrupt Organization Act. It's very hard to defend.
Yes.
It's very hard to defend without getting into all the details of it. But I had 3 RICO cases.
Yeah.
So, you know, the last one is the one that I negotiated and took a plea on and then ended up, you know, doing my prison time and getting my forfeitures and restitution and all of that. So I saw that the life was in trouble. And at the same time, I met a young woman who I fell in love with.
Yep.
And I said, you know, I marry this girl, I stay in the life, I'm going to make her either a widow or I'm going to make her, I'll go to jail for 100 years. So what's the sense of doing this? I have to make a move. And that's when I decided I want to keep this girl in my life and I'm going to try to walk away.
Yep. And so in making deals with law enforcement, and I what we're talking about here, and I know in the world that you work and the world that I worked, you say an informant, snitch, rat, or whatever, it's not looked at well. But I've been reading up on what went down with you and the agreement when you pleaded guilty. There was a negotiated agreement to do the time. You had to forfeit millions and millions of dollars, $14 million. But you maintain that you never gave evidence that put anyone in jail. Is that how you reconcile with what took place there?
Well, here's the deal. I want you to understand something.
Yeah.
When I took my plea, there was no cooperation involved.
Right. Okay.
You see, when I beat the Giuliani case, I had leverage over the government because the same witness was going to testify against me in the gas case, and we destroyed him.
Right.
So the government was worried. I had won 5 cases. They're saying, is he going to win a 6th?
Yeah.
So when I said I want to take a plea, they pretty well jumped at it. So we negotiated a plea, 10-year prison sentence, $14.7 million restitution. I had a lot of forfeitures. I gave up the plane, the helicopter, the whole bit. And there was no cooperation involved in that at all.
Right.
The way it happened later on is that I got subpoenaed to testify in one case against an associate of mine, of my dad's. And then, look, here's what I tried to do. And I want to make this clear. Yeah. Nobody ever went to prison. Nobody ever went to prison because of me.
Yeah.
I did not give information to put people in jail. I testified in front of the Senate about corruption in boxing. I don't know if you know this, but Senate investigation hearings here are like theater. You know, nobody gets indicted. Nobody gets charged with anything. It was theater.
Yeah.
And that was it. They put on a show for the American people. But, and I talked mostly about what I did. Yeah. This is what I did at that time. So, yes. And the bottom line is nobody ever went to prison because of anything I said. And quite honestly, I manipulated the government. They admitted to it now. And when they found out that I was manipulating them, they threw me back in prison for 3 years. And they put me in solitary for almost 29 months and 7 days.
I did
Kept me locked down.
did actually see that you were the thought you strung them along, and eventually they've said he's given us nothing. And
Exactly.
I have seen this. I've seen this from my side of it, where people, we're going to cooperate, but they're telling us stuff that we already know, and it doesn't really play out that way. But so prison for someone, a made guy, a capo with a profile like yourself. Did you do it hard in prison because of your profile, or did you go in there and you had people that you could associate with?
Oh, yeah. Well, listen, I came in with a very high profile, and, in there, guys are trying to, they want to get close to you in there. And so I had that when I was on the yard. My problem was the government was mad at me all the time, and they kept putting me on diesel therapy, moving me to different prisons. Then they kept me locked down for almost 3 years. So I had to contend with that. But I never had trouble with anybody in prison, none of the inmates. Yeah. Always got along with everybody and made friends in there when I was on the yard. My problem was the government, and being upset with me. The thing that really got them, they brought me in while I was out on parole. I did 5 years. I was out on parole for 13 months, very tough time. And they picked me up while I was on parole and brought me into New York. I was living in California to testify against the boss of the Jersey family.
Yeah.
And basically I refused. And they brought me back. And within 10 days, I was back in jail. They violated my parole. Okay. So they knew at that point, they said, okay, this is all a game on his part. He's never going to help us out. And boom, threw me back in prison. And then I did another 3 years. They tried to indict me on another case. They couldn't. Fell apart. And but it was the best thing that happened to me. Best thing, because everybody on the street realized he's not cooperating. He's not putting anybody in jail. And the heat that was on the street went off of me.
Okay, because just those type of rumors or speculation can be very, very dangerous for you. But at that time, if there's someone's not seeing you around or you've disappeared, all of a sudden, he's rolled, and that would, and it's no exaggeration at all, that gets you killed in your world.
My boss, he was very upset with me because we were close. Persico, he passed on now. My father was upset with me. Everybody was upset with me. But I kept telling my dad, I'm not going to hurt anybody. Yeah. Don't listen to these people. I know what I'm doing. I'm not going to put anybody. Look, I could have hurt a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Trust
Obviously.
me. I was there for a long time, and I was in a good position. That wasn't what I wanted to do. I wasn't mad at people. I just wanted out of their life. A lot of guys, they didn't treat me right, and they did this and that. Look, there were times when maybe I wasn't treated right, but that's the life. You're not joining a police force. You're joining the street. Things don't go. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know what I mean? Things, that's the kind of life. You got to understand how to navigate it. And if you don't, shame on you. If you get involved, you better know how to navigate that life. Or don't get involved.
Well, Michael, I just want to check you on one thing, that it's not the police force. Let me tell you, there's treachery in the police force. So,
okay.
I don't know to the extreme of the Mafia, but it could be called the Mafia in the blue uniform.
Well, I get it.
With the time in prison, is that when you made the decision to get out? As in, not get out of prison, to get out of the life?
No. I took the plea as part of my decision to leave the life.
Okay, so you're married to, was it Camille, your wife?
Yes. Yes.
And you were married just before you got sentenced.
We got married in July of 1985. I went to prison in December.
Okay.
So we only married a few months. I only knew her total on the street 18 months. So, but it was my decision to walk away. Taking the plea was part of that, because I figured I'll give the government some money. I'll give them some time in prison. I was able to get in the plea agreement any unknown crime they couldn't charge me with again, except for murder.
Yeah.
If there was murder involved, there's no statute of limitations. And I didn't get a pass on anything, but I knew I wasn't worried about that. Yeah. So it was a good deal for me, and there was no cooperation involved. And they were happy, and they figured they didn't know what my plan was. They figured I'd come out of jail and they'd come after me again. But at least I had a conviction.
Yeah. So how was that? I know there was concerns from the family, the Mafia family, that you want to leave when it became public that you were going to leave. Now there was a contract put out on you, and yes. If I understand it correctly, your father perhaps didn't initiate the contract, but accepted that's the price. If you want to leave, you swore an oath, and if we're going to stick to that oath, well, if my son gets knocked, that's the price he has to pay. Do you want to talk to us on that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, he went along with it. He didn't order it. He went along with it.
Yeah.
And people have asked me, do you believe your father would have put a gun to your head? And I said, no, I don't believe he would have. But, he was in a position too. He took an oath also. And if a guy becomes an informant and starts putting people in jail, it's a violation of the oath, So I understood what he did.
Yeah.
But I also knew what I was going to do and the fact that I wasn't going to hurt anybody. And I kept telling him that. I said, Dad, don't believe what you hear. I'm not going to hurt anybody. Now, how did I tell him that? I had a visit. I would send somebody to see my dad and say, no matter what you hear, it's not going to happen. And I think he trusted that. And that's why we were able to patch it up afterwards, And I said to him, Dad, I told you I was never going to hurt anybody. I said, but I'm not going to stay in a life and spend the rest of my life in jail and destroy my family. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So I know maybe you don't agree with it, but that's my decision. And he got it.
Yeah.
He got it.
So he mightn't agree with it, but perhaps understood it.
Yeah. And then, later on we patched it up. And I think at the end of the day, he was happy. And at least on the street, he was able to tell people, my son never hurt anybody.
So your father, he's in his 80s or late 80s, and he's sentenced to prison. And most people would think you get a sentence at 86, 87. It's a life sentence. But he managed to live to 100 in prison.
Well, actually, he was 92 when they sentenced him to another 8 years.
Right.
Okay. He was in his 92 or 93.
Yeah.
And he did the entire 8, and he came out at 100 years old. He was the oldest inmate in the federal system at the time of his release in 2017.
You've got to give him credit for that. I'm not going to let him beat me. Yeah, I'll get out.
The thing with my dad is his oath was more important. He wanted to die with his boots on. His oath was more important than anything else. His legacy in that life was more important than anything else. It meant everything to him.
Can you, like I'm saying he understood what you were doing or the path you took, can you understand his path?
I do, but you got to look at it this way. Here was my problem with my dad, and I faced him. I said, Dad, you were out on parole 5 times.
Yeah.
During those 5 times, you saw the shape of our family. It was in bad shape.
Yeah.
Any one of those times, you could have left New York, walked away from that life, and tried to help your own family, but you didn't. The life was more important to you, and as a result, your family was destroyed.
Yeah.
So I had an issue with that, honestly, because he put the life above our family. And it devastated. Listen, my mother died in 2012. She was 33 years without her husband. At the end of her life, her relationship with my dad was ugly because she blamed him for everything that went wrong, and rightfully so.
Yeah. And
I had a sister died of an overdose of drugs at 27, dysfunctional.
Yep.
My brother was a drug addict over 25 years. We saved his life. I can't tell you how many times.
Yeah.
He would have been dead. My younger sister died young. She was not mentally stable. So the whole family's destroyed. And, I said, Dad, I have an issue with that. You could have left and tried to take care of the family and put us back in shape. Not me. I was older then. Yeah. But he didn't. But the flip side of that, yes, I respect the fact that he took an oath and he was going to die, but look at the cost.
Yeah, I think that's the important message. It's all very good to live by that code, but look at all the people around you that you love that have been destroyed, just breaking themselves around you. Yeah, it's a heavy situation. So you've out of the mafia, the contracts, obviously the contract wasn't fulfilled. How do you live your life now? You're a high profile, like globally high profile. So you're not, you're out there. Has bygones been bygones? So you're still at risk?
Well, listen, I look at it this way. I'm a public figure.
Yep.
There's guys out there. I mean, who knows? I mean, today, I don't know how it is in Australia, but there's so much mayhem going on in the United States. People are killing people.
Yeah.
You don't know. So somebody wanted to make a name for themselves. Is it going to be an ordered hit from the mob? No. I don't bother these guys. Everybody I ran with is dead.
Yeah.
Dead or in prison. I don't have anything to do with the new guys now. I don't bother them. I don't talk about them. I don't name them.
Yeah.
They don't have any axe to grind with me. But you always got to be concerned that somebody's out there. But do I live in fear? No.
Yeah.
I'm very public. I try to talk respectful about everybody because I feel that way. And I'm 71 years old. So, I've lived this long. Who knows,
Well, if you've got the genes of your old man, perhaps there's still a long time left. Australia, organised crime in Australia. Just to explain how I see organised crime, and I worked major crime for 25 years. I've only been out for a couple of years, so I pretty well know what was going on. Our perception of crime over here, the highest profile, what people would call organised crime, seems to be the bikies. They're out there. They've been causing the mayhem on the streets. There's the gangland wars and people getting shot in the streets. But my sense of it is that people sit higher above the bikies. Organised crime, the ones that you don't see. And the mafia over here in Australia has kept a very low profile, the Calabrian mafia. What's your take on mafia, not just here in Australia, but across the world? Do they spread their tentacles and it all leads back to Italy? Or is it just they evolve in their own way?
Yeah, they evolve in their own. Here, we didn't answer to Italy here.
Right.
At all. No. We're our own group here, our own organizations.
Yeah.
I will tell you this, they've gotten smart here in the United States. They're undercover. They're acting the way they should act.
Yes.
And if I'm hearing the same thing about Australia, that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
If you become high profile in that life, you're in trouble. I mean, that's it. It's crazy. Here in the United States, again, I don't know how it is there. You could be a street criminal. You can shoot somebody. You can go in and rob a store in broad daylight, and nobody cares.
Yeah.
You get bailed the next day. That's what's going on with the progressive law enforcement out here.
Yeah.
But if you're an organized crime, you're going down. They're coming after you like you're the worst people in the world. It's unbelievable. I never see anything like it. You're more hated. Or you know why? Because we don't fight back to them. You know what I mean? We don't, and we make headlines.
Yeah.
We make headlines that last.
You've taken down the mafia, Don. Yeah.
Yeah, people, look, I have to be honest. You make a career when you put a big mob guy away.
Yeah.
When you get the local guy down the street who just robbed the store, nobody cares about you at that point. So, it's a shame. I wish they would spend more time, protecting people on the streets here because it's really got out of hand. It really has. Yeah,
we're hearing over here and just reports of the chaos over there, and it doesn't seem like it's in a good state at the moment.
This city of LA is becoming dangerous. Seattle, Portland, New York, Chicago is a war zone.
Yeah,
and it's terrible what's going on. I mean, I have 5 daughters, and I worry for them. And we live in an affluent neighborhood, but you got to worry.
Yeah, really. With that, just the chaos and I think the random violence is what scares a lot of people too. Like you're walking down the street, minding your own business.
There's no strict consequences. The mentality is, I laugh at people. I said, do you think if you lower the consequences for criminals that they're going to turn their life around and become good people? They're going to take advantage more. Yeah. Crime is going to increase, which is exactly what's happened. You know that as law enforcement. Yeah. Criminals are criminals. You give them an edge and they're going for it. And that's what's happening here in the States in a big way.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? It
really is.
Evolved into that. to be a criminal in this day and age, and really, I think law enforcement has a huge advantage in this day and age fighting crime with the technology. Can you, let's hypothetically, you've done one of your, I'm not saying hit as in kill, I'm saying assaulting someone in the street these days. How much CCTV footage, your phone data, all that. Could you imagine being in the life now, how careful you would have to be?
Absolutely. I mean, part of the problem with my former life is we didn't keep up with the tools, the weapons, the technology that law enforcement had. We just didn't. And that's why so many people got caught on tape. And, it's very hard to refute your own words. When you're on video and you're on tape saying things, it's very hard to refute that. And we didn't keep up with the technology. When I say we, most across the board, most of the high-profile guys. And that's what caused the destruction, really.
Well, there's one over here in recent times, in the last 12 months, the anonymous sting. I don't know if you heard of it over there. I think it was done in the US as well, where law enforcement set up a fake app, like the type of apps that everyone thinks, you can't decode that, you can phone, they can't listen in, blah, blah, blah. It was the actual law enforcement that set this app up, and a lot of the crims bought into it thinking they got this secure line, and then they realised that the police were monitoring, or law enforcement were monitoring every conversation. So, yeah.
We had the same thing when cell phones came out. Everybody said, well, you can't tap a cell phone.
Yeah.
It's so untrue, but a lot of guys got caught on their phones.
Well, it's human nature. The amount of times I've listened in on a phone and the phone might be off and they start whispering. Yeah. Even police do that. The phone might be off. It's crazy. It's just human nature. You like to communicate. And this, we're getting close to the end. But living the life that you've lived, the paranoia. Whether you're living the life in the Mafia with the police after you, or when you've left the Mafia and perhaps Mafia taking revenge. How have you dealt with that, Michael, just on a personal level?
Well, again, I'm a very confident guy to begin with.
Yeah.
So I just lived my life, I wasn't going to go into hiding. I know what I did for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And again, it wasn't to hurt anybody. It wasn't to seek revenge. It wasn't to get mad. I don't talk really negative about anybody in that life because I don't feel that way. Listen, I'm a person of faith, and I believe God had a different plan and a purpose for my life. It certainly as played out that way. I mean, I never thought I'd be speaking. I never thought I'd be talking at over 1,600 churches in the past 20 years, helping people out, giving my testimony. I never thought I'd be speaking in schools. I never thought I'd be talking to these gangbangers.
Yeah.
So there's been a purpose for my life. And, I've tried to be true to that. I really believe this. To those who have been given much, much is expected in return. And I've been very blessed.
Okay.
I could have easily been, dead or in prison for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But I'm here for a purpose. I got a wonderful wife who stuck with me for 37 years, 38 years through thick and thin. I've got beautiful children. I've got grandchildren. And I've had a lot of challenges. Don't get me wrong. It hasn't been a bed of roses. I had a lot of stuff that we had to go through, but we're here.
Yeah.
And I feel very fortunate.
And the fact that you're giving back to society, speaking to people and that, do you feel like it's balancing the ledger? Because I would imagine you look back at the life and you did what you did, you own what you did. Do you feel like you're, when it's all said and done, when you sign off, you've done more good than bad?
Well, people have asked me, Michael, do you do what you do to make up for what you did in your past life? And my answer is no, because I can't make up for what I've done. What's done is done.
Right.
I said, but as a person of faith, you believe that, if you're sincerely sorry for what you did, and in my faith, the Christian faith, we accept Christ, and we go on and live our lives that way. It's got to be real. Because I always say, listen, I pulled a lot of frauds on the street. I was pretty good. You can't pull a fraud on God. He knows what our motivations are. But if you're doing things the right way, well, then, it's sincere, it's meaningful, and people can see that. And, hopefully the rewards later on are great. So that's how I look at it, you know. And so far it's worked out for me. And I'm very, very fortunate, very blessed.
Oh, well, it's interesting that you're looking at your life that way. I think I understand where you're coming from with it, and you are doing a lot, and you're getting a story out there. And I think it's important. I like stories of redemption too, and you've been on that dark side, but you've turned your life around. But I think just giving back to people and pointing kids in the right direction, or not kids, they could be young adults, but you can turn your life around, and you're an example of it. As you said, you could have been could you imagine if you were sitting in a jail cell for the next 20, 30 years, what type of person you might have become? So it's, what are you're coming over in Australia in October, and you got some live shows, I hear. You're going around the country and doing some talks.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I've spent some time in Australia. I was on a tour there a couple of years back. In both Sydney, Melbourne, Gold Coast, went everywhere, and people were just wonderful.
Yep.
Very accepting. They enjoyed the story very much, and I've made a lot of friends there, so I'm very anxious to come back. We're playing Sydney, Melbourne, a couple other cities.
Yep.
And I've got a great tour guide. He's wonderful, the promoter, I should say. So we're looking forward to it.
In Australia, the Mafia that we know that we've got in our region is the Calabrian Mafia. And they actually reached out to you?
Well, yeah, one person did. Same when I was there last time. When I was there last time, there was a person who reached out for me and invited me to his restaurant to eat.
Yep.
And what I said to him, I said, listen, it took me a while to get a visa to come in. Australia gave me a hard time. They didn't want to give me a visa. I finally got it. And I said to him, listen, in all due respect, I said, it took me so much time to get a visa. If they see me with you, I said, they'll probably throw me out of the country. So I said, come to the show if you want, but I don't think it's a good idea to come to the restaurant. He was very nice about it, by the way. That was last time. So this time somebody did reach out to me and said, hey, if you're here, come and spend some time with us. And I think it was a nice reach out.
Right. Okay.
And then, listen, I'm going to be honest with you. I get a threat a day online.
Okay.
But it always happens. So I had the same thing. Somebody, from Australia threatened when I come over there, this is going to happen and all of that. So I want to tell you this. I never, ever take anything for granted.
Yeah.
So when somebody makes you could tell when it's silly and whatever, but if somebody makes a statement like that, I'll be careful and cautious about it, and I'll do what I need to do. And we'll see. But I don't want to alert anybody or alarm anybody or anything like that. I'm just telling you it happened.
Yeah. No, I understand. And if you've been on one side, there's always people on social media or whatever that are going to reach out and make certain comments. I've had quite a few comments made about me, and you just got to take it on board and see where it's coming.
So often I say, listen, why would you make a statement like, I said, I wish I was back in the street to teach you something. I said, why would you make a threat on social media? I said, you think we can't find out who you are? Of course we can, People, I don't know what they're thinking.
Michael, I always thought the threats that concerned me were the ones that weren't made. When I see someone that just looks at me, I'm thinking that unnerves me more than someone that's I'm going to kill you when I get out. Okay, thank you. You've given me a heads up. Yeah,
100%. I mean, obviously, you don't want somebody to know what you're going to do. But anyway, that's that.
Mafia in the country. What? When in Australia or different countries, how does it infiltrate in the country? How does the mafia spread out in the country?
Well, again, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know too much about mafia in Australia. I've heard that they're a powerful group and that there is definitely a presence. The fact that they're undercover and they're not in the news every day is a good thing. Yeah. That means they're probably not doing too much damage to anybody. They're running their things. I don't know if there's a union situation there, in Australia, but normally we got involved with unions. We did get involved with business. If there's numbers being run, I'm not sure how that goes, and, the normal gambling situations, but the fact that you don't see the presence is good for everybody. I'll be honest with you. It's not impacting your lives.
Do they have a connection with, as I said, the most sort of out there group that we've got is the OMCGs? Does the Mafia and the outlaw motorcycle gangs work together?
We never did, really. We knew some of the guys, but, I can tell you this. Mafia Cosa Nostra are very clannish. We deal with our own.
Yeah.
We don't want to deal with outside groups if we don't have to. There are occasions when that might happen, but in general, we do our own thing.
Yeah. And very, very much ethnic based too, like you trust with the Italian, your father was Italian, and that sort of gives you some credibility. With the dramas that's happening over in your parts and the chaos on the streets, that if the Mafia were around, what sort of impact do you think that would have if the Mafia was on the streets with all this chaos? It just wouldn't be put up with?
No, it would not. I mean, our communities were policed, I would say, by us.
Yeah.
We didn't tolerate crime in our communities, and people felt safe. Listen, I grew up in Brooklyn. My sisters can come home at 2:00 in the morning, unchaperoned. They could walk the streets, no problem. We never closed our doors. We didn't lock our doors.
Right.
The community was safe. And in our neighborhood, Greenpoint, where I grew up in Long Island, there was no crime there. Because number one, they knew we had a presence. Number two, they knew we wouldn't tolerate anything. So why mess with us?
So we've had a spate in Sydney of public shootings in the street. Really, it's not like a lot of the murders I did. The person was taken away and whatever was done was done. We've had a sort of outbreak of public shootings where it's really made a statement. If the Mafia, if that was happening in New York, I would imagine there would be some sit-down meetings where people would be told to pull their heads in and stop creating all this drama.
Oh, absolutely. Well, listen, it was rare when that happened with us.
Yeah.
Rare. I mean, rare. That's not something you don't want to bring attention to yourself.
Yeah.
And that was frowned upon. When people did that, listen, I told you one of the dangers of that life, somebody's in trouble, you walk into a room, you don't walk out again. That's how we did things.
Yeah.
We didn't try to make a spectacle of it because you don't want the heat, because what happens? Law enforcement then comes down on everybody.
Yes. Yeah.
So you don't want that, but I'm not saying it's never happened, but it's not the desired way.
Michael, what you're saying there is that the Mafia would regulate violence on the street or control it and do the policing that police can't do. Do you think that makes a safer environment?
I certainly do. Listen, we didn't go out and start shooting innocent people.
Yeah.
Unheard of. Never do that. You didn't see us going into restaurants. You didn't see us getting on the street and any kind of street violence like that. Unfortunately, I know of maybe one incident that was a rarity when, there was a hit put out on somebody and an innocent person happened to get caught up in it.
Yeah.
Extremely rare, frowned upon. Nobody wants to see that happen. And it wouldn't happen from us. We don't go after innocent people like that.
Yeah.
And I can tell you without a doubt that your neighborhoods would be safer and you wouldn't see that kind of street violence. No way.
Yeah. Look, all the best with what you're doing, and thanks for taking the time and talking to us. And I know it's unusual, an ex-mobster and an ex-cop talking, but I've really enjoyed it.
Well, I like that. When we can come together like this, like I said, I got a lot of friends now on the law enforcement side. Some of them retired, some of them still in, but it's amazing how much we have in common.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Good stuff. Thanks, Michael.